Question from the audience. This one is about No Child Left Behind. As a teacher, I'm concerned about education. Our teaching freedom is diminished with the constant pressure of No Child Left Behind. How do you stand on NCLB? What is your direction in education? This is from Tammy and Lake Crystal. I believe this one first goes to Mr. Walz.
I'm the only member of Congress who's an active teacher who's taught under No Child Left Behind. I watched it from its implementation to where it's at right now. I will tell you this, the public has every right to demand measurable outcomes for their students. They have every right to demand where their money's going and are they getting their money's worth. No Child Left Behind has done some good things, and this is what I would say that it has done. It taught us as educators to learn the vocabulary of accountability. In many cases, things we were doing, but we weren't able to show the metrics to move it forward. The problem with this is it has been so narrowly focused, it does not have multiple measures of how to measure student achievement, and it is so snapshot. It has been incredibly punitive in how it's enforced on schools. What it's done is it's shrunk our curriculum at a time when we need to be expanding. It's taken our teachers away from truly instilling in them the philosophy we've always had in this country. Education's not filling the bucket, it's lighting the fire. We've been incredibly innovative by broadening our curriculum. So the first thing that happens is, according to all research we see, students who are involved in music or other activities excel in other things like math and science. Those are the first things that are cut. We're talking about a childhood obesity problem in this country, so what do we cut? Physical activity in those schools, and then we end up narrowing it down. What we need to do with No Child Left Behind is making sure that the local school districts have the ability to understand what they need to do for their students. I went to a school where there were 24 of us in my graduating class. Well, we're cousins. Every single one of us was in FFA and took agriculture in that. That was a great thing that we needed to do because most of us came from agricultural backgrounds in a small community. What did No Child Left Behind do to that community? It cut the agricultural program, put the school on failing to meet adequate yearly process, and killed the morale of the teachers. We can measure progress and should demand it, but we need to use the multiple measures and make sure that the teachers have a say in it.
Thank you, Mr. Walz. Mr. Davis.
I'm against the No Child Left Behind Act. I believe it should be abolished. To me, the primary problem is with it is that it doesn't respect the fact that the primary authority of the child's education are the parents. And we do have a problem with education in this country in the primary area. And a big part of it is I don't know how much money you can throw into the problem. Just identify what some of the outcomes are for education. What are the primary influences of good education in children? And the federal government doesn't necessarily have a role in these. And the first and foremost is the home environment. You can take a school with the greatest facilities, the greatest teachers from one area, put it in another area, and you won't necessarily get the same outcome. Because so much is dependent on the home environment. Provide a stable home environment, a loving home environment. I have 4 children that are in public and private school in Rochester, so I think I have a perspective as a parent on that. Secondly, something that my father used to say around the dinner table is that as a retired school principal, second most important is discipline and order. And over the past 30 or 40 years, the discipline and order in schools has declined, partly because teachers are afraid to enforce discipline because of the lawsuits that are involved. I saw that, there's studies on it that confirm it. What can the federal government do about that? I'm not sure. I think it's after the parents, it needs to be the local communities that decide how education is conducted in their communities. And then the states. Ronald Reagan was in favor of abolishing the Department of Education, and I'm not sure if that's a bad idea.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Walz, one man rebuttal.
Well, I disagree on the abolishment of it because I think if Little Rock taught us anything, it's pretty important to make sure that we have the ability to make sure that Little Rock, that we have our schools functioning properly. I would agree with Brian, though. I think he brought up a very valid point and a good point, that this issue of school readiness is the biggest issue. There's an economist here in Minnesota who said, big market-based person, and he said, our biggest investment in our economy that we should put right now for recovery is in early childhood education. We would spend less dollars later on. We would have more students ready to learn because all the brain-based research shows that time from age about 2 to 5 is where it's most critical. And what he said was, as a market-based person, I said, so what are you saying? He said, yeah, the single biggest market failure in this country is you can't shoot choose your parents. So many students aren't prepared to do that, and I would argue we need to make more of a focus on that. We would save money in the long run, you have them ready to go. So on that respect, we do. As the issue of discipline is, come visit my classroom sometime. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Walz. Mr. Davis, 1 minute for both.
Well, maybe you can help with discipline in a lot of other areas in the public school system, even the private school system. I do support vouchers as part of the solution to this problem. It just shouldn't be a public school education. If people are paying for private education as a good outcome, verify that vouchers could work. I'm also concerned that since World War II, the Supreme Court has worked very hard to remove any reference to God or religion in the public place. That if a local community wishes to have optional religion classes and they pay for it out of their own property tax base, they should be allowed to do that. The ACLU should not be able to dictate that to them. Our founding fathers, when they talk about separation of church and state, what they meant is the state should not control the church, but the church is not to not have any influence in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We move on to the next question.